Plausible deniability operations. In the world of espionage and covert warfare, the most valuable asset isn't firepower or funding, it's deniability. When governments need something done that they cannot be seen doing, they rely on assets who exist in the grayest corners of legality and morality. And no one embodied that role more completely than Blackwater. Through a maze of subsidiaries, unofficial partnerships, and back-channel contracts, Blackwater became the go-to force for operations that required one thing above all else: plausible deniability. These were not traditional military missions. They weren't on the Pentagon's books. They didn't involve uniformed soldiers or American flags. These were shadow missions, off the record, off the radar, and often off the moral compass. Whether it was destabilizing a rogue militia, protecting a controversial leader, or delivering weapons to unofficial allies, Blackwater was deployed where government fingerprints could not appear. Their operatives worked under assumed identities, used untraceable equipment, and often posed as employees of fictitious companies or NGOs. In one Middle Eastern country, Blackwater teams allegedly posed as humanitarian workers while mapping out an arms smuggling route. In another, they trained local security forces aligned with a political faction the U.S. could never publicly support. The mission always remained the same: provide results, deny involvement. The beauty of plausible deniability operations was their flexibility. Blackwater didn't answer to a rigid chain of command. They answered to mission goals. This allowed them to move faster, hit harder, and adapt on the fly without the bureaucratic delays that plagued traditional agencies. It also meant fewer questions when things went wrong. These operations were often facilitated through offshore accounts and third-party contracts. A foreign government might request consulting services through a shell corporation, unaware or deliberately ignoring the true nature of the deal. Blackwater would receive the contract, mobilize its assets, and deliver the requested outcome: a raid on an insurgent camp, a political dissident silenced, or a crucial infrastructure site secured before it fell into enemy hands. The United States benefited from this arrangement as well. It allowed policymakers to project power without risking political fallout. When a controversial mission needed to be executed in a volatile region, say, arming Kurdish factions that a NATO ally considered terrorists, Blackwater could operate under the radar. If caught, the U.S. could truthfully say its military was not involved. That's plausible deniability in action. But it wasn't just about foreign policy. Blackwater also protected high-value individuals whose survival was politically explosive. In at least one known instance, a deposed African leader was extracted from a hostile capital by Blackwater operatives just hours before a rebel group arrived. No state actor claimed responsibility. No embassy filed a report. The leader vanished from one continent and reappeared on another, alive, protected, and grateful. Of course, this kind of freedom came with significant risks. If a mission failed, or if contractors were caught, there would be no diplomatic immunity, no rescue mission, no official acknowledgement. Blackwater operatives knew this. They accepted the risk because they operated at the bleeding edge of geopolitics, where deniability wasn't just a cover, it was the mission itself. Whistleblowers later hinted that some Blackwater operations involved psychological warfare, manipulation of local elections, and covert sabotage of civilian infrastructure to trigger specific political responses. The company, of course, denied all such allegations. But the very nature of their work made proof nearly impossible. No paper trail, no digital records, just whispers, rumors, and results. Plausible deniability operations redefined what private military contractors could do. Blackwater was no longer just a security firm. It was a political instrument, a scalpel used when bombs would cause too much noise, when drones would leave too much evidence, and when silence was the only acceptable outcome. In a world where states wage undeclared wars, where influence is often more valuable than territory, and where truth is buried beneath layers of plausible denial, Blackwater became the perfect ghost. They didn't exist until they did. And by the time anyone noticed, it was already too late.